They said there was no way I could ruin a meal for 20 alien races at once. Challenge accepted. That was how Daniel shattered the silence in the kitchen bay. His words sparking over the simmering unis. Around him 20 pairs of eyes, compound, glowing, segmented or multifaceted, turned toward him in unison. The assignment had sounded simple on paper, yet impossibly difficult in practice. Every recruit at the Interstellar Academy of Cultural Exchange had to prepare one dish for the whole class, not just their own species but for everyone. Test of imagination, empathy, and survival skill. For the HTH, cooking meant refining minerals until they became edible gems. For the Yasi, meals were fermented for weeks, devoured alive with bacteria still thrashing. But for humans, cooking was fire and earth, smoke and patience. Daniel rolled up his sleeves, ignoring the humming prep pods around him. Others had already claimed their spots at molecular forges, plasma burners, and nutrient engines. The bay thrummed with precision and power. Daniel walked past it all and crouched at an empty corner, his fingertips brushing the floor grid. The instructors hadn't forbidden tools. They had only said, "Make food." So he made his choice. From his belt he pulled a compact field spade, snapped it open and began digging. Metal scrape against plating echoing across the bay. The Trillax twins whispered in clicks. The Sulin cadet, his throat ridges translucent, folded his arms, unimpressed. Even Kareth, the star culinary recruit of a species famed for banquets, tilted her head in disdain. "The human has broken," someone muttered. Daniel kept working. He dug until a pit, a meter deep, yawned before him. He lined it with alloy scraps, like stones and stacked dry fuel packs he had scavenged earlier, while the others obsessed over compatibility charts. He struck a spark. Fire leapt. As flames flickered, the room shifted. Smoke spread slowly, primal and raw. A scent that every nervous system present, no matter how alien, understood on some level as warning, warmth, or memory. The instructor, a Serati elder with eyes blinking out of rhythm, stepped closer. "Cadet Thorne, explain." Daniel shrugged. "I'm cooking my way." From the hydroponic garden he'd brought roots, from storage some protein cuts, and bundles of greens. He wrapped them in leaves, tied with vines, and buried them beneath heated stones, sealing it all with soil. The bay filled with a soft hiss of steam rising from earth. No sleek reactors, no glittering devices, just fire, ground, and time. At first the others dismissed him, but curiosity was stronger. One by one, they drifted nearer. Cart sniffed. "What is this?" she asked sharp. "An earth oven," Daniel said. "Humans used it long before ships, before ovens at all." The Trillax twins crept closer, antennae trembling. "So you bury food in dirt?" Daniel smiled. "Not dirt. Trapped in stone. Slow cooking. Flavors blend, nothing burns." Across the bay, dishes were failing. The Sulin's fermenting tank burst in a sour cloud, drawing groans. Yasavat's meal slithered away, half living with bacterial overgrowth. Devices hummed and buzzed, but Daniel's small fire crackled. With steady confidence, he leaned back, soot on his cheeks, and let it work. Hours passed. The others fussed over measurements, calibrations, flavor, receptors. Daniel shifted stones now and then, testing warmth, then simply waited. The instructor circled, jotting notes. At last the moment came. Cadets carried dishes that fizzed, pulsed, or writhed, edible only to their own kind. Daniel returned to his pit. He dug with care, lifting steaming bundles. Aroma spread. Smoke, herbs, roasted roots, savory meat. The bay filled with something universal. The instructor inhaled sharply. Even the Sulin leaned closer, caught despite himself. Daniel unwrapped the leaves, releasing clouds of fragrant steam, and set food in shared trays. He hadn't made one dish. He had made plenty. The pit cooked dozens of bundles. Dinner's ready, he. Silence. Then, slowly, the Trillax twins tasted. Their antenna curled with pleasure. Karth followed, pride breaking. Shock. Soon, cadets from species Daniel couldn't pronounce leaned in. Sampling, chewing, exchanging astonished. Look. The instructor cleared her throat. Cadet Thorn, you fed the class. Daniel grinned. That was the point. Karth wiped her hands, reptilian eyes narrowing as though recalibrating all. She thought of humans. You mean to say? She asked slowly. Your people solved hunger by digging holes and tossing food inside. Daniel leaned against the wall, soot streaked on his face. Pretty much holes. Fire and patience. Worked in deserts, islands, mountains. One pit could feed dozens. People ate together. A low chorus of clicks, hums, growls answered. Even the mocking Sulin had to admit the simplicity he'd dismissed. His own dish still frothed sour, reeking of ammonia. Beside Daniel's bundles, it seemed pathetic. The instructor's stylus scratched notes. Cultural authenticity noted. Adaptability noted. But explain further, cadet. Why should primitive methods matter in a galactic age? Daniel rubbed his hands, gesturing at the spread. Because tech fails. Reactors jam. Processors clog. But fire, stone and soil don't. If you can spark, flame and dig for roots, you can feed yourself and everyone else. That's survival. That's culture. The Trillax twins were already dragging more bundles their way, clicking with delight as steam curled around their mandibles. The Yossi cadet hesitated, then finally lifted a piece, chewing slowly. Their 4 stomachs worked in separate ways, yet the human's meal didn't revolt them. The fire pit had softened everything into a texture that required neither specialized teeth nor unique enzymes. It wasn't perfect for every species, but it was close enough to leave them astonished. Daniel caught the glances beginning to pass across the room. No longer just curiosity, but something sharper. Some cadets grew guarded, others resentful. For years, the Academy's interspecies contests had been about outshining one another with brilliance, machinery, or complexity. A human had just outdone them with soil and flame. Kareth leaned forward, scales shifting with each steady breath. Do you always solve problems by discarding the obvious tools? Daniel smiled faintly. Not discarding, choosing what fits. Sometimes old ways mend new problems. You only need to know when to dig. The instructor scribbled more notes as the tension thickened. Even if this was only a trial, cadets treated every task as a test of reputation. Daniel could feel it in the sidelong stares, in the hushed murmurs. He had revealed something that unsettled the balance of pride. When the last bundles were eaten, the Serati instructor spoke again. Very well. The task continues. Cadets, tomorrow you will adapt your methods to an unknown terrain. A simulated crash site. No synthesizers, no supply bays. You may use only what you gather. Her gaze lingered on Daniel longer than the rest. We will see who truly understands both nourishment and cooperation. The chamber erupted with overlapping voices. Protests, excitement, boasts. Some fretted over missing their specialized equipment. Others looked eager to prove themselves under pressure. Daniel only nodded, already imagining earth, rocks, and the fire he would coax alive again. Later, as the cadets left the bay, Kareth caught up beside him. Human, she said, her stride matching his. I don't enjoy being outdone. Tomorrow, I will cook better than you. Daniel glanced her way. Good. Then everyone eats well again. Her eyes flickered in puzzlement, unaccustomed to rivalry framed as partnership. She hissed under her breath but said nothing more. That night, Daniel sat in the academy dorms, scrubbing soot from his hands. He thought of his grandmother back on Earth, who used to dig fire pits for family feasts in the countryside. He remembered her saying, "Feed people and you'll never be alone." Out here among the stars, surrounded by cadets who barely tolerated him, those words pressed heavier than ever. The following morning dawned inside the simulated wilderness dome, a vast arena shaped with landscapes from countless worlds. Jagged cliffs rose on one side, swamps steamed on another, while forests and scrubland spread between. Cadets were split into groups of 5, each told to feed not only themselves but also their rivals. It was no longer about single dishes, it was survival as a whole. Daniel's group included Kareth, one Trillax twin, the sullen Sulon, and a quiet Avori whose feathered head tilted as though catching far-off winds. They were issued no tools, only their uniforms. The others argued immediately. "We should search the swamps," the Sulon pressed. "Fermentable reeds grow there." "No," Kareth countered. "Protein-rich insects crawl under rocks in the cliffs." The Trillax twin clicked impatiently. "Too slow. We starve before then." Daniel crouched, scooping a handful of dirt and letting it crumble through his fingers. "First, we need fire." All eyes turned toward him again. The Sulon sneered. "Of course. Another pit, human. You'll bury us alive this time." Daniel simply smiled. "If it keeps us fed, why not?" He let the dirt sift, watching grains catch in the dome's artificial sunlight. The soil was dry but not barren. Stones scattered nearby already shaped a picture in his mind. A cooking pit. Fire first. Always fire. He stood scanning the terrain. "We split up. Kareth, search the cliffs for protein. Trillax, you track critters, see if anything crawls or burrows here. Sulon, gather reeds or plants, anything that doesn't scream poison. Avori, you and I gather firewood." The Sulon hissed at taking orders from a human but stalked toward the swamp anyway. Kareth gave Daniel one more measuring look before loping toward the cliffs. The Trillax twin clicked in acknowledgement and darted into the brush. That left Daniel and the feathered Avori, who moved in eerie silence. Together they searched the forest edge, stacking branches and brittle sticks in their arms. At last the Avori spoke, voice airy and melodic. "You take command as if it were instinct." Daniel shrugged. "I take survival. Groups fall apart if no one decides the first step. Fire gives warmth, safety, and turns anything edible into food. Everything else follows." They returned with an armful of wood. Daniel arranged it carefully, striking sparks between 2 rocks until flame caught. It flared small, then steadied. A calm focus settled over the clearing. Even the Avori tilted his head, entranced by the glow. One by one the others returned. Kareth dragged a makeshift sack cut from her tunic, wriggling with fat insects pried from cliff cracks. Their legs twitched even as they hissed. The Trillax twin dropped a basket of stunned lizards, snatched by quick claws. Daniel nodded. "Perfect. Enough for 5. Kareth curled her lip. "And what miracle will you bury them with this time, human?" Daniel dug another pit, lining it with stones heated in the flames, layering reeds, insects, and lizards together. He crushed nearby leaves for seasoning, unsure if they would help, then wrapped portions in reed skins, pressing them into bundles and sealing everything beneath soil and stone. The others watched warily, but none interfered. Hours stretched in quiet tension. The Sulon muttered, swearing his fermenting method would have been quicker. But when the first scent drifted up, smoke and roasted protein, the clearing hushed. Hunger sharpened their patience. At last Daniel unearthed the bundles, handing them out. Kareth tore one open with clawed hands. Steam curled upward. Aroma richer than any sterile nutrient paste rolled out. Kareth tasted, chewed, and her eyes widened. Savory. Tender. She looked almost betrayed by her own enjoyment. The Trillax twin devoured theirs instantly, mandibles grinding furiously. The Sulon hesitated the longest, then sampled with visible reluctance. His throat ridges pulsed as he swallowed. "It is acceptable," he admitted at last. Daniel smiled faintly, chewing his share. The reed-wrapped insects had crisped, mingling with the lizard's meat. Survival food, yet shared food. He noticed the subtle loosening of shoulders. Even the Sulon chewing grudgingly made them, briefly, a group, not just strangers pressed together. But the trial wasn't finished. Once the pit was emptied, the instructor's voice thundered from hidden speakers across the dome. "Cadets, survival is more than feeding yourselves. Tomorrow groups will merge. 10 must provide for 20. Unease rippled through the clearing. Feeding 5 had already strained tempers. Feeding 20 with clashing methods felt impossible. The Sulon scowled. Kareth folded her arms, brooding. The Trillax twin clacked uneasily. Only Daniel kept prodding the embers. That night, beneath the dome's artificial stars, he thought of home, of how fires in pits and backyards, on beaches, in deserts and mountains, drew strangers into companions. Smoke in their clothes, bellies full. People remembered they weren't alone. Tomorrow would be harder. But he also knew fire and earth scaled. The larger the pit, the more mouths fed. Dawn came, and cadets were herded to the dome's central plain. 20 of them, mixed species, carrying scraps from the day before. Arguments erupted instantly. Whose method mattered most? Whose supplies would dominate? The air buzzed with hostility. Daniel stepped forward, spade sinking into soil. "We build one fire. One pit big enough for 20. You bring what you have. We layer it together. We eat together or fail together." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the quarrel. Dozens of eyes turned. Some doubtful, some scornful, some quietly hopeful. Fire cracked behind him, answering his call. Chaos surged. The Sulon claimed his reeds sacred, not to be touched by lizard meat. The Yasi demanded living bacteria for true fermentation. The Trillax twins snapped in frustration. The Avori only watched the air, waiting for calm that never came. Daniel let the noise crest, then raised his voice. "Argue all you want. If you don't eat, you fail. Fail and you dishonor your people. Fire doesn't care about pride. It cooks whatever you give it." Kareth hissed. "And if your fire ruins the flavors of 20 worlds?" Daniel crouched, digging into soil with his spade. "Then you'll learn survival matters more than perfection. But it won't ruin, it will blend. Trust me." The Serati instructor, high on her platform, said nothing. 4 eyes blinked separately, waiting to see if sparks of cooperation caught. Hesitation lingered. Then one by one, cadets relented. The Sulon tossed reeds into the pile, muttering. The Yasi placed jars of fermenting roots. The Trillax twins dumped their darting insects. Others added berries, tubers, cuts of protein, fragrant leaves. A mound of clashing ingredients grew. Daniel dug the largest pit yet, wide enough for 10 to stand in. He lined the base with stones, glowing red from fire. Then came the layers: reeds, meat, insects, roots, berries, greens. Water splashed over, steaming the mix. More heated stones sealed it. Last came soil, packed firmly. The pit hissed and smoked, a buried furnace. "Now," Daniel said, brushing dirt from his palms. "We wait." Waiting tested them worse than gathering. Hunger gnawed. Doubt spread. The Sulon paced, spitting that it was folly. The Yasi fretted their bacteria would die. Kareth sat still, claws tapping, pride battling curiosity. Daniel kept feeding the fire, soot dark on his face, calm. Hours dragged by. At last, Daniel pulled away the first soil and lifted stones. Steam surged upward, carrying a scent none expected. Rich, smoky, sweet tangs and earthy savor woven together. Not one world's cuisine, but all of them united. He unwrapped the first bundle, handing it to Kareth. She tore it open, stared, then bit. Her jaw froze. Her eyes closed. She swallowed. It works. The Sulan snatched his share, chewed, throat ridges flaring in surprise. The Yasi tasted and didn't retch. Their stomachs accepted it. The Trillax twins devoured theirs, mandibles clattering in delight. Soon 20 cadets circled, eating greedily. Hostility melted away. For the first time in the exercise, silence came not from tension, but from satisfaction. Daniel leaned back, elbows in the dirt, watching them. They weren't comparing. They weren't competing. They were surviving together. Smoke drifted over them, clinging to cloth, scales, and feathers. A shared scent binding them as firmly as hunger. The instructor finally descended, stepping lightly across the soil. She studied the emptying pit, cadets licking fingers or mandibles, faces glowing that had snarled hours earlier. "Remarkable," she said quietly. "Cadet Thorne, what have you taught them?" Daniel rose, brushing ash from his hands. "That fire doesn't care where you come from. That food isn't only fuel, it's connection. Share it, and even with strangers you're not alone. Out in the void, that matters more than perfect recipes." The instructor regarded him, for eyes unblinking. "You fed them all. You turned discord into cooperation. Lesson achieved." She tapped her slate. "Highest marks." Murmurs rippled through the ranks. Some resentful, some grudgingly respectful. Kareth stepped forward, towering. Scales glittered in the firelight. "Human," she said, voice low. "You forced me to respect you. Against my will. But respect still." Daniel met her gaze. "I'll take it." The Sulan gave a reluctant nod. The Trillax twins clattered their approval. Even the Avori tilted his feathered head, ruffling in some silent acknowledgement. Together they broke camp, scattering ash, stamping out flames. Yet smoke clung to them as they filed back into the academy dome, a shared perfume of earth and survival. 4 days after, when cadets from rival species passed in corridors, the faint whiff of wood smoke made them pause, remembering the pit, the hunger, eased not by machines but by hands, flame, and patience. Daniel never claimed triumph. Only that he had done what humans had always done. Dug into earth, fed the group, made strangers into companions, if only for a night. And somewhere deep inside, he imagined his grandmother smiling, her words carried across the stars. "Feed people and you'll never be alone."